Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second class of Comparative Philosophy of Death and Dying. In a previous lecture, we briefly talked about what does it mean for us to read any text philosophically by referring to the works of Dante. And then we examine a few lines in the beginning of the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this lecture, we will examine the first three tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, I'd like to talk about the first three tablets in the following four sections. The first, I'd like to talk about the concept of tyranny, especially in relation to the first tablet. And then we will briefly talk about the significance of Enkidu, and then dive into the concept of friendship, how the notion of friendship plays an important role in this entire epic. Finally, as usual, we will end with concluding questions. Now, as I mentioned in a previous lecture, that your course arrangement might change. Remember that? In fact, it did. After I recording the first lecture and then realized that we would not be able to assign you the online presentation under the current circumstances, so we are going for the journal. Keeping the philosophical journal is very important for you to cultivate your capacity to write. It should also help you think about the questions that would emerge from reading the classical text. It should help you read philosophical texts in a much deeper level than merely the literal level. Okay, so make sure to keep your journal as much as you can. And if you have a difficulty coming up with any entries, that is to say, if you have any difficulty in coming up with the questions that generate your entry, feel free to pick up any of the questions that I'm listing in this lecture. They should help you come up with the ways in which you can construct your entries. And also, I mentioned briefly in email that perhaps a few weeks into this semester, I can ask you to submit a few sample entries. Then I can give you a feedback. You're doing great, or you should change this and that. So just keep writing, and then we shall see how much improvement we can make through keeping the philosophical journal. So that would be something that I wanted to give you as an announcement. So in this lecture, we will pick up where we left in the last lecture. In the last lecture, we talked about a few stanzas in the beginning of the Epic of Gilgamesh. We're going to start from there to see how the story develops. And the first important theme of the text is the notion of tyranny. So let's take a look at the first tablet. Now, the Epic of Gilgamesh, of course, starts with the description of the hero or the main character, Gilgamesh. So in tablet 1, line 30, you see the description of the main character. Now in this lecture, I will try to give you screenshots of text so that you will be able to understand which part of the text I'm referring to. But this, unfortunately, takes quite a bit of time for me to copy and paste and put these screenshots. So eventually, I would like to just recite the lines and by making citations. So you should be able to follow where I'm actually referring to in these texts. But in this lecture, I just give you a few screenshots to give you a guidance. But eventually, I'll stop showing these screenshots and directly read the text and tell you the main theme that you can pick up from these philosophical texts, okay? So just to let you know, in this lecture, I'll do this. But eventually, you have to be able to do it with your own text. When I say something like tablet 1, line 35, and then you would know I'm talking about this page. Okay, so let's take a look at this description of the main character. So this is tablet 1, line 30. Surpassing all other kings, heroic in stature, brave scion of Uruk, wild bull on the rampage. Going at the fore, he was the vanguard. Going at the rear, one his comrades could trust. A mighty bank protecting his warriors, a violent flood wave smashing a stone wall. Wild bull of Lagabanda, Gilgamesh, the perfect in strength, suckling of the august wild cow, the goddess Ninsun. Gilgamesh, the tall, magnificent, and terrible, who opened passes in the mountains, who dug wells on the slopes of the uplands, and crossed the ocean, the wide sea, to the sunrise. Who scoured the world ever searching for life, and reached through sheer force Utanapishti distant. Who restored the cult centers destroyed by the deluge, and set in place for the people the rights of the cosmos. Who is there can rival his kingly standing and say like Gilgamesh, "It is I am the king." Gilgamesh was his name from the day he was born, 2/3 of him God and 1/3 human. Now with this first 5 stanzas in this class, you should be able to pick up many things. First, you see wild bull of Lagabanda. This is a god, Gilgamesh's father, and a wild cow, the goddess Ninsun, which is Gilgamesh's mother, who will show up in later part of this story. This image of Gilgamesh is provided as the king of all kings, right? He's the founder of the city. He's a protector of his warriors. He's the wall that protects the city of Uruk from floods, right? And then you have this description of Gilgamesh as the tall, magnificent, and terrible, who opened passes in the mountains, who dug wells. So he's the foundation of civilization, described as the tall, magnificent, and terrible. He also searched for the life, and then by sheer force, he says, it reached Uttanapishti, the distant, who restored the cult center destroyed by deluge. Remember, the previous lines talks about he who saw the deep, the country's foundation. So Gilgamesh brought something back. Gilgamesh, he saw what was secret, discovered what was hidden. He brought back a tale of before the deluge. So we talk about this break in the historical narrative in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and how Gilgamesh is described as someone who went to the other side of that break and brought back the secret from the other side, which is symbolized by the deluge. And this is great. Who is there can rival his kingly stunning and say like Gilgamesh, "It is I am the king." Can you see how exalted he is? Can you see how high his social standing is in this story? Gilgamesh was his name from the day he was born, 2/3 of him god and 1/3 human. What does this tell you? Gilgamesh is a kind of demigod. He's both divine and human. But look at the ratio. Any demigods in Greek mythology, for instance, are usually half human, half god, right? But in this story, Gilgamesh is described as 2/3 of him god and 1/3 human. So the ratio between his nature of divinity and his nature of being human is tilted toward the side of the divine. So he's much more closer to the realm of the divine than the human. So you immediately get this image of Gilgamesh is surpassing all the other kings. He's much more god than a human. So Gilgamesh, the tall, magnificent, and terrible, he's considered to be an unrivaled hero. Nobody can match his strength. And then the description goes on from tablet 1, line 56. A triple cubit was his foot, half rod his leg, 6 cubits was his stride, cubits the front part of his. His cheeks were bearded like those of the hair of his head grew thickly as barley. When he grew tall, his beauty was consummate. By earthly standards, he was most handsome. There's some element in him that is human, which requires growth. So he reached this consummate beauty by growing tall, right? So not only he's endowed with this nature of the divine being, but also he achieves a kind of perfection in terms of beauty according to human standard. In Uruk the sheepfold, he walks back and forth like a wild bull loading it, head held aloft. He has no equal when his weapons are brandished. His companions are kept on their feet by his contest. So no one can match the strength of Gilgamesh. The young men of Uruk he harries without warrant. Gilgamesh lets no son go free to his father. By day and by night, his tyranny grows harsher. Gilgamesh, the guide of the teeming people. It is he who is shepherd of Uruk the sheepfold, but Gilgamesh lets no daughter go free to her mother. The women voiced their troubles to the goddesses. They brought their complaint before them. Though powerful, preeminent, expert, and mighty, Gilgamesh lets no girl go free to her bridegroom. The warrior's daughter, the young man's bride, to their complaint, the goddess paid heed. So, interestingly, the Epic of Gilgamesh doesn't give you a typical image of a hero. A typical image of a hero would be someone saves us from evil that we are suffering from, right? When the society is going down, there's somebody that helps us conquer the enemy, somebody that helps us conquer the evil that we are suffering, right? So sometimes we talk about medical stuff as the hero in time of pandemic, right? Hero is somebody that saves us from evil. But in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero is described as a tyrant. Is that really interesting? What kind of tyranny is this? Let's look at the line again. The young men of Uruk he harries without warrant. Gilgamesh lets no son go free to his father. By day and by night his tyranny grows harsher. Gilgamesh, the guide of the teeming people. By day and by night his tyranny grows harsher. So there's a kind of a spiral or acceleration of tyranny, or spiral devolution of the character of Gilgamesh, right? his tyranny grows harsher by day and by night. What is the ancient Mesopotamian notion of tyranny then? We are facing a different conception of hero, but then we are also facing a kind of conception of tyranny that is specific to the ancient Mesopotamian civilization. So think about this for a second. What's the ancient Mesopotamian description of tyranny? We can easily see their conception is that a tyranny is essentially about messing with the people, right? People of the Uruk. Uruk the sheepfold is messed up with this hero who is 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. He's actually messing with the people because the sons cannot go to their father, daughters cannot go to their mother, and wives cannot go to their husband. It is not a general collection of human individuals, but it's about family. So the essential nature of tyranny, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, is that the motion that interferes the wellness and goodness and existence of family life. So you can see the Gilgamesh is messing with the relationship between son and father, daughters and mother, and also husband and wife. Tyranny is about messing with the people, but more specifically, breaking down the structure of family, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, I usually use examples to talk about this concept of tyranny, but unfortunately I couldn't find any specific pictures in open source. So you have to use your imagination to think about, okay, in the history of humanity, we have so many different kinds of empires. We have so many kinds of tyrants. So you should be able to actually think about how does this ancient Mesopotamian concept of tyranny fits with our understanding of the history of the world? Is there a specific example that you can provide to concretize the concept that the Epic of Gilgamesh is presenting? But we can see how the ancient Mesopotamian people thought tyranny is about messing with the structure of family life. That is to interfere with the structure of society where you have a healthy relationship between sons and fathers and daughters and mothers and husband and wife. And tyranny is about breaking down that structure for the advantage of the ruler. Now, let's talk about cure then. Remember we talked about this in the previous lecture, that philosophy is about raising questions, but also we are responsible for providing an intellectual solution to the problem. So how does the ancient Mesopotamian civilization conceive of the cure or solution to the problem of tyranny in society? So there's a story that tells us this hero that is more of a god than a human, who served as a foundation of civilization, but then he is depicted as a tyrant. So we expect that there's going to be some kind of solution. So let's take a look at more lines to see how the ancient Mesopotamian civilization conceived of the solution to this problem of tyranny. The cure. Now, in normal circumstances, right, when we think about the history of humanity, think about history of Japan or think about history of Western civilization, whatever, when we think about tyrant or when you think about a ruler that is severely criticized by his or her subjects, what happens to them? Or what are the regular historical solutions to the problem of tyranny? It's usually a removal, right? You have so many assassinations of emperors and feudal lords in Japan in the history of history of Japan. You have so many history of assassination in European history, American history. So normal circumstances, when we think about the notion of tyranny, a solution to the problem is a removal of the top that is rotten, right? But this is definitely not what the ancient Mesopotamian people thought as a good solution to the problem. Now we have to think about this for a second. What is the problem with this method as a solution to the problem of tyranny? If the removal is not conceived as the reasonable solution to the problem of tyranny, it implies that the ancient Mesopotamian people probably conceived some problem in this method. I don't think it was difficult for any civilization to think about this as a solution, right? So you have an enemy or you have somebody who is causing you a problem, let's just eliminate that person. That seems to be quite intuitive motion, but ancient Mesopotamian tale gives you a different take on this solution to the problem of tyranny. So that is to say they are actually seeing some problem in this removable, right? For instance, let's say the ruler is oppressing people with the violence. If we remove the ruler with the violence, we are subscribing to the same problematic principle by which you are oppressed. So the oppressed become the oppressor. So in the history of philosophy, we have so many different concepts that talk about this problem of relationship between master and slave. So you can easily talk about this removal of the violent ruler with the violence. It's a contradiction. Solution problematically affirms the violence of the ruler, for instance, in this context. I'm pretty sure there are more problems with this conception of removal, but this is something we should think about when we read the ancient Mesopotamian description of the problematic relationship between the ruler and the ruled. So let's take a look at the actual lines where they talk about the solution to the tyranny. This is tablet 1, line 80. The gods of heaven, the lords of initiative, to the god Anu they spoke. Remember God Anu. God Anu is described as the father of the gods, the god of the sky, but also resident in Uruk, where he is Ishtar's father. So the Anu is the sky god and father of Ishtar. So remember, Gilgamesh is supposed to be the shepherd of the Uruk, the sheepfold, yet he is subjugating people for his own tyrannical desire, unruled, unsuppressed desire, right? He does whatever he wants. He owns everybody. So people, the young men and fathers, mothers, young daughters, the women voiced their trouble to the goddess. They brought their complaint before them. And the warrior's daughter, the young man's bride, to their complaint the goddess paid heed. The gods of heaven, the lords of initiative, to the god Anu, the people of Uruk spoke. A savage wild bull you have bred in Uruk the sheepfold. He has no equal when his weapons are brandished. First, they acknowledge that the Gilgamesh is unrivaled hero. He's the strongest. Nobody can stop him. His companions are kept on their feet by his contest. The young men of Uruk he harries without warrant. Gilgamesh lets no son go free to his father. By day and by night, his tyranny grows harsher. Yet he is the shepherd of Uruk the sheepfold, Gilgamesh, the guide of the teeming people. Though he is their shepherd and their protector, powerful, preeminent, expert, and mighty, Gilgamesh lets no girl go free to her bridegroom. The warrior's daughter, the young man's bride, to their complaint the god Anu paid heed. There are some missing lines. Let them summon Aruru the Great One. She it was created them, mankind so numerous. Let her create the equal of Gilgamesh, one mighty in strength, and let him vie with him, so Uruk may be rested. They summon Aruru the Great One. You Aruru created mankind, now fashion what Anu has thought of. Let him be a match for the stone of his heart. Let them vie with each other, so Uruk may be rested. The goddess Aruru heard these words. What Anu had thought of, she fashioned within her. The goddess Aruru, she washed her hands, took a pinch of clay, threw it down in the wild. In the wild she created Enkidu, the hero, offspring of silence, knit strong by Ninurta. All his body is matted with hair. He bears long tresses like those of a woman. The hair of his head grows thickly as barley. He knows us not a people, nor even a country. So the ancient Mesopotamian solution to the problem of tyranny is not to remove tyrant, but is to provide rival and friendship. Friendship is the cure of tyranny, they think. But remember, this involves is that the people of the Uruk pray to the gods, and then the gods provide the solution to this problem by working in nature. So there's several different elements that works as a cure to tyranny. But really interesting, right? The ancient Mesopotamian people thought that the solution to the problem of tyranny is not removal of the tyrant, but it is to provide a proper friendship to that ruler. If we bring someone that can put the tyrant in check and then cultivate friendship with that tyrant, we can solve the problem of tyranny. That's very interesting wisdom that we can receive from the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Enkidu is the solution to the problem, and this is the reason why he's called the hero. The term hero comes in for the first time in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Very interesting that the Enkidu is the hero that saves the city of Uruk from the tyranny of the king, who is the protagonist, the main protagonist of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now remember, Enkidu is provided by gods and nature. So Enkidu, the characters, symbolizes something more than just rivalry and friendship with the Gilgamesh. But the gods and nature work directly into Enkidu. And also what stimulated gods to create this hero out of nature is the people of Uruk, right? So Enkidu, the hero of the Epic of Gilgamesh, is supposed to bring peace to the people of the Uruk by keeping tyranny of Gilgamesh in check. So that is to say, Enkidu is supposed to bring order to the structure of family life in the city of Uruk. Now we can see how ancient Mesopotamian conception of tyranny was to mess with the lives of people, especially their familial relations. And the solution to the problem is to bring the friendship to the tyrant such that we can bring the order back to lives of people, especially their familial structures or the ways in which the people relate to each other. So there are a lot of symbolism involved here, and this is something that you should think about. Do you think this is really true? The solution to the problem of tyranny is not to take down the tyranny, or it is about bringing the structure to the family life and the people? Or would you say that no, I think the history testifies that the only ways to stop the tyranny is to remove the bad apple from the top of the tree? This is a really interesting philosophical point that Epic of Gilgamesh makes, and definitely something that we can think about in reference to the history of humanity. Then let's take a look at the hero, Enkidu. Remember the line 100? It describes the goddess Aruru. She washed her hands, took a pinch of clay, threw it down in the wild. So Enkidu was created out of clay with the idea that Anu thought of. Divine idea is woven into clay, and it is born in the wild as the hero, Enkidu. So there's a significant symbolism of creation of this creature in the wild. And then the description we read in the end of the previous screenshot, it's tablet 1, line 105. All his body is matted with hair. He bears long tresses like those of woman. The hair of his head grows thickly as barley. He knows not a people, not even a country. So he's born alone in the wild, very hairy, right? That is matted with hair. It's just a wild beast born in the wild, basically, right? And then the line continues, coated in hair like the god of the animals, with the gazelles he grazes on grasses, joining the throng with the game at the waterhole, his heart delighting with the beasts in the water. So he's born in the wild and he's moving along with animals, right? So he's one with natural organisms. He's grazing the grass as a gazelle, joining the throng with the game at the waterhole, his heart delighting with the beasts in the water. So he's just he enjoys this complete rapport with nature. He's a part of the nature. He's just like the animals. There's no division between his ways of living and then the ways of nature. They are completely harmonious with each other. And then here comes a hunter, a trapperman. Did come upon him by waterfall. One day, a second, and then a third, he came upon him by the waterhole. When the hunter saw him, his expression froze, but he with his heart, he went back to his lair. The hunter was troubled, subdued, and silent. His mood was despondent. His features gloomy. In his heart there was a sorrow. His face resembled one come from afar. The hunter opened his mouth to speak, saying to his father, "My father, there was a man came by the waterhole. Mightiest in the land, strength he possesses. His strength is as mighty as a rock from the sky. Over the hills he roams all day. Always with the heart he grazes on grasses. Always his tracks are found by the waterhole. I'm afraid, and I dare not approach him. He fills in the pits that I myself dig. He pulls up the snares that I lay. He sets free from my grasp all the beasts of the field. He stops me doing the work of wild." So notice, hunter. Why the occupation of hunter is picked from all the other occupations available in the civilization of Uruk is because hunting is the medium between human civilization and nature. It is a human craftsmanship, but it depends solely on nature. So the hunter as a symbolism bridges the gap between nature and human civilization, and it is fitting that he is the witness to the creation of Enkidu. And what is he saying? He's saying to father, right? Look, I'm putting these traps to get the wild animals for feeding our civilization, right? Feeding our people as a hunter. But Enkidu is filling up the hole that I'm digging. All the snares that I prepared for trapping these animals are actually broken by him, right? So he's protector of animals. He's a part of animal, and he's stronger than the hunter. So he's protecting the animals. Well, he's completely in the side of nature, as you can see. And what's the father's advice? Father's advice is to go to city of Uruk, go seek out Gilgamesh, take the road, set your face toward Uruk. Do not rely on the strength of a man. Go, my son, and fetch Hisham Hat the harlot. Her allure is a match for even the mighty. Before going to Hisham Hat, let's talk about this phrase that they keep repeating. Mightiest in the land, strength he possesses, his strength is as mighty as a rock from the sky. As mighty as rock from the sky, what is this? It is easily imaginable that ancient society, they had less pollution, so they were able to actually see the sky just like this. And then you see this, as mighty as a rock from the sky. It symbolizes meteor. But what does it actually symbolize? Right? It refers to, at the literal level, it's talking about the rock from the sky. This is a meteor that suddenly appears in the middle of the sky at night. It is mighty. It makes powerful energy packed into this natural phenomena, right? But why is this symbolism so important for description of the Enkidu? Keep that in mind when you read the rest of the text. As mighty as rock from the sky. And this appears and reappears throughout the text. So it must mean something really significant. And try to think about the symbolism that you can get from this notion of meteor in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay, so the young man hunter talks to his father, and father tells him to go to the city of Uruk and talk to Gilgamesh, and do not rely on the power of man, right? He says something like that, right? Okay, let's be precise. Do not rely on the strength of a man. It's not possible for human power to be able to subdue Enkidu. It requires something else. Go, my son, and fetch Hisham Hat the harlot. Her allure is a match for even the mighty. So what is he suggesting? We should get this Hisham Hat, who is the prostitute or harlot. Now, at this point, you should be laughing when you read this Epic of Gilgamesh, right? This is the oldest surviving body of human literature, and it is supposed to be talking about the king and his friend, hero, but it starts with the conception of tyranny, and then it starts with Hisham Hat the harlot. So it's tyranny and sex are the oldest surviving topic in the history of human literature. That's something to think about, okay? That's the beginning of the story. Let's keep going. So the hunter goes to the city and talks to Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh say the exactly same thing as the father of the hunter. Said Gilgamesh to him, to the hunter. This is tablet 1, line 160. Go, hunter, take with you Hisham Hat the harlot. When the hart comes down to the waterhole, she should strip off her raiment to reveal her charms. He will see her and will approach her. His heart will spurn him, though he grew up amongst it. Off went the hunter, taking Hisham Hat the harlot. They set out on the road. They started the journey. On the third day, they came to their destination. Hunter and harlot sat down there to wait. One day and a second day waited by the waterhole. Then hart came down to drink the water. The game arrived, their hearts delighting in water. Enkidu also born in the uplands. So you have this hunter and harlot from this city of Uruk are watching this Enkidu going about the business of his daily life with the animals, right? With the gazelles, he grazed on grasses, joining the throng with the game at the waterhole, his heart delighting with the beasts in the water. Then Hisham Hat saw him, the child of nature, the savage man from the midst of the wild. So at this point, it's quite clear that Enkidu represents the notion of nature. He is the child of nature and savage man. This is he, Hisham Hat, hunter says. Uncradle your bosom, bear your sex, let him take in your charms, do not recall, but take in his scent. He will see you and will approach you. Spread your clothing so he may lie on you. Do for the man the work of a woman. Let his passion caress and embrace you. His heart will spurn him, though he grew up amongst it. Then there are going to be the scenes that we cannot describe within the confines of PG-13 from tablet 1, line 189 to 195, and then he ends with this. She did for the man, well, let me read that. Hisham Hat unfastened the cloth of her loins. She bare her sex, and he took in her charms. She did not recall, she took in his scent. She spread her clothing, and he lay upon her. She did for the man the work of a woman. His passion caressed and embraced her. For 6 days and 7 nights, Enkidu was erect as he coupled with Hisham Hat. With her delights, he was fully sated. He turned his gaze to his heart. The gazelle saw Enkidu. They started to run. The beasts of the field shied away from its presence. Enkidu had defiled his body so pure, his legs stood still, though his heart was in motion. Enkidu was weakened, could not run as before, but now he had reason and wide understanding. So many things happen in terms of symbolisms. First of all, I think these scenes should make you laugh. When you read it, it's just I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? That we have this one of the most ancient stories and spent the work of a scholar to be able to decipher the writing system. And we get this beginning of the story with this tyrant and this child of nature, Enkidu, made out of clay with a divine idea, goes through sex with the prostitute, right? I mean, a couple questions we could ask first before going to reading the symbolism within the context of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Is this misogynistic? Is this story pertaining to the patriarchal society in such way that we can label this story as somewhat anti-feminism? I think it's very difficult to say that there is a gender equality between man and woman in ancient story like this, but we have to be really careful. Hisham Hat, the prostitute, represents something more than what we usually conceive of the word in a contemporary society. Especially if you come from China, if you come from Japan, if you come from Europe, North America, we have different conception of this occupation, and we also have different stereotypes and different labelings of the person who is in that position to engage in this business, whether it is legal or illegal. It really doesn't matter. Different cultural conception of the term plays such a strong role in our reading of the text sometimes that we want to make these judgments. But Hisham Hat is far more powerful than you can ever imagine, especially when we pay attention to what's actually going on in the story. So let's try to practice a little bit of teleological suspension of political ethical thinking. So sometimes, okay, it's funny, it might be inappropriate in a certain cultural setting to read this story out loud, but it doesn't matter. Let's just put that aside for a second. Let's try to read the symbolisms, okay? So that's the suggestion that I would like to make at this point. Yes, it is funny. You should be laughing as you read this story, right? I mean, if I read this text in class, usually the group of people giggling in one corner, then group of people just laughing out loud in a corner, and there's a group of people, their faces completely red and trying not to look into each other's eyes, right? So it's very normal to have that response, but as a good students of philosophy, let's try to read symbolisms. What do they represent, and what kind of conception are they trying to convey to us through this text? So you see the Hisham Hat as a symbolism of sex. Interesting, right? Because hunter is the one occupation in human society that bridges the gap between nature and human civilization. Ancient Mesopotamian conception of sex is the same. It is some human activities that is closer to the world of nature. It's very animalistic, right? In some ways. It's not typically conceived of as high civilized activities. That's why it is considered to be taboo to talk about in many society, right? So you can see this activity is bridge between human civilization and nature. And that's precisely why Hunter and also Gilgamesh did not rely on the strength of men, but rely on this to bridge the gap between nature and human civilization. Interestingly, he also introduces this notion of reason. After the 6 days and 7 nights, Enkidu had defiled his body so pure his legs stood still, though his heart was in motion. Enkidu was weakened, could not run as before, but now he had a reason and wide understanding. So interestingly, in ancient Mesopotamian conception of sex is, yes, it is something like animal, but it is also the activity by which humans are differentiated from animals. As a result, Enkidu cultivate reason and wide understanding, right? So you have to think about why did they think this? Each cultural background describes, hunting and sex and reason in a different way, but why the ancient Mesopotamian conception of sex was such that it was capable of differentiating, alienating Enkidu from nature and other animals. So he became closer to the side of human civilization. Now, he doesn't become human immediately, but this is the first step. He started to cultivate reason and understanding. So you have to really read into these symbolisms. Okay, let's read on. So this is the line 203. He came back and sat at the feet of the harlot, watching the harlot, observing her feature. Then to the harlot's words he listened intently as Hisham Hat talked to him, to Enkidu. So Enkidu finally listens. He listens to this character, Hisham Hat. He cultivates reason and understanding, and he listens to her intently. You're handsome, Enkidu. You're just like God. Why with the beast do you wander the wild? Come, I will take you to the Uruk, the sheepfold, to the sacred temple, home of Anu and Ishtar. While Gilgamesh is perfect in strength, like a wild bull lording it over the menfolk. So she spoke to him, and her word found favor. He knew by instinct he should seek a friend. So Hisham Hat puts this idea in Enkidu that he should actually seek a friend. But interestingly, in the beginning of a response to the Hisham Hat, Enkidu is really ambitious, right? Like, I'm gonna take down Gilgamesh. This is line 220. I will challenge him, for my strength is mighty. I will vaunt myself in Uruk, saying, I am the mightiest. There I shall change the way things are ordered. One born in the wild is mighty, strength he possesses. And then Hisham Hat is really tactical, right? She doesn't say, yeah, you should go to, Uruk and just take down the king. No, don't say such a thing. Let people see your face that exists, I know indeed. Go Enkidu to Uruk the sheepfold, where young men are girt with waistbands. Every day in Uruk there's a festival. So there's a kind of seduction of Enkidu into this idea of let's just go to the city of Uruk and just enjoy the life there. Oh Enkidu, this is line 240. Cast aside your sinful thoughts, Gilgamesh, it is whom divine Shamash loves. The gods Anu and Enlil Air have brought in his wisdom. So the gods are on the side of Gilgamesh. Before you even came from the uplands, Gilgamesh and Uruk was seeing you in dreams. So here comes this distinction of dream and reality in the following. Hisham Hat is telling this story to Enkidu to persuade him that you should come to city of Uruk. Now, this theme of dream and reality and the movement back and forth is perpetual swing motion in the Epic of Gilgamesh. I do think that they carry a significant symbolic meaning. So try to think about that as well. Why is this so important for the ancient Mesopotamian story to move back and forth between dream and reality? I'm going to give some ideas later on, but at this point, I would like you to think about why is it so important to talk about dream reality? Right? Usually our conception of a dream is something that the brain fires the chemicals and then we see images during the sleep. When we wake up, we realize it wasn't real. So there's a kind of reality, non-reality, fiction, and what is factual, right? Ancient Mesopotamian story, it seems like they don't make that kind of distinctions, but we will see this later on. So dream. So Hisham Hat is telling this story to Enkidu. So this is not some scene that is happening on its own and narrator is giving you a story. The narrator is Hisham Hat. That is very important. Whenever you read Plato's Republic or any other texts that are written by a thinker who doesn't speak with his or her own voice. So when the character is speaking certain words, we shouldn't take that words literally. We have to pay attention to the context in which the statement is made, and we have to pay attention to who actually made that statement to whom. Remember, Hisham Hat symbolizes sex, and Hisham Hat is talking to Enkidu, who symbolizes nature. And Hisham Hat is telling this content. So we have to actually contextualize what we're going to see in the following as a dream that a Gilgamesh actually saw. Enkidu is described as rival and friend in this dream in a nutshell. So let's pay attention to the dream itself. This is line 242. Hisham Hat is saying that before you even came from the uplands, Gilgamesh and Uruk was seeing you in dreams. So Hisham Hat witnessed the Gilgamesh talking to his mother, that he already met you in dream. Gilgamesh rose to relate a dream, saying to his mother, "Oh mother, this is the dream I had in the night." Now at this point, you have to pay attention to the fact that the Hisham Hat is not a simple harlot, right? That we would imagine in a contemporary society, because she is with the king, and then she is with the king's conversation with his mother, who is a goddess. So obviously she belongs to the order of the divine, or she's the priestess. So she is a messenger from the divine as well. She's an incredibly powerful figure in this story that harnessed Enkidu's energy to become part of city of Uruk and become friends with Gilgamesh. So we have to pay attention to that fact that the Hisham Hat is reporting this. "Oh mother," again, this is line 246. "Oh mother, this is the dream I had in the night. The stars of the heavens appear above me. Like a rock from the sky, one fell down before me. I lifted it up, but it weighed too much for me. I tried to roll it, but I could not dislodge it. The land of Uruk was standing around it. The land was gathered about it. A crowd was milling about before it. The menfolk were thronging around it. Like a babe in arms, they were kissing its feet. Like a wife, I loved it, caressed and embraced it. I lifted it up and set it down at your feet, and you, O mother, you made it my equal." The mother of Gilgamesh was clever and wise, well versed in everything she said to her son, while Ninsun was clever and wise, well versed in everything she said to Gilgamesh. The stars of heaven appeared above you like a rock from the sky. One fell down before you. You lifted it up, but it weighed too much for you. You tried to roll it, but you could not dislodge it. So she repeats the same line. Having had a second dream, this is line 273. He rose and entered before the goddess his mother, said Gilgamesh to his mother, once more, O mother, have I heard a dream. In a street of Uruk, the town square, an axe was lying with a crowd gathered around it. The land of Uruk was standing around it. The country was gathered about it. A crowd was milling about before it. The menfolk were thronging around it. I lifted it up and set it down at your feet. Like a wife I loved it, caressed and embraced it. And you, O mother, you made it my equal. So on and so forth. So there's two images of Enkidu. Remember, as mighty as a rock from the sky. So you still have the same image of this suddenly appear from nowhere. From this dark sky, this bright meteor comes down on us. That's Enkidu. So the first image is a rock. Then second image is the axe. Now, when you read this text, it looks like a simple repetition of the same story over and over, right? Gilgamesh says A, Ninsun says A, Gilgamesh says B, his mother says B. A and B look almost identical, and you miss the subtle differences. But there is a huge differences between first description of Enkidu and the second description of Enkidu, right? The first one is rock, and the second is axe. And also notice, Gilgamesh cannot lift up the rock or the axe by himself, but what enables him to lift it up and love it and caress it like his wife is the people and the gods. So the gods send Enkidu like a rock from the sky, right? But what enables Gilgamesh to become friends with the Enkidu is the gods' blessing as well as people surrounding this rock and axe. So community of humans and divine community enables the friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Also, transformation, we have to pay attention to this transformation again. So you have this notion of rock. Rock is something that's round, right? It's almost closer to the natural form. So it's not something that we can command. Each rock has its own shape and it's rough, right? It's giant. We can't really lift it up. And then it transforms to something like axe. That is a tool. What does that mean? I think what this transformation symbolizes, first of all, the object of axe happens quite often throughout the story. So there's a connection between this transformation and how Enkidu actually serves as an axe for the Gilgamesh. Clear symbolic gesture that Enkidu is a rock from the sky, but eventually turns into an axe that helps Gilgamesh accomplish a certain thing, right? So I'm not going to spoil your story for you here. But the symbolism of axe at the literal level already has so many significance throughout the story. What you also see is not only the instrumental value that supports Gilgamesh to accomplish something, but also it has a certain telos, a certain purpose. Rock has this natural shapes that we can't really make sense of. It's just giant. It's in the middle of nowhere. We don't know how it got there. But the axe, when you see axe in the middle of the forest, for instance, you see that there's a kind of meaning behind it. There's a certain purpose that it's going to serve. So the friendship, the symbolism of friendship is very interesting here in Epic of Gilgamesh. In a sense, friends are someone that appears out of nowhere like rock from the sky. It's very powerful. Like, you are college students. So you probably have a friends from high school, very close friends from high school, or you're going to make a great friend through philosophy program. But the friends are someone that actually appear out of nowhere. You never knew them. It just happens to show up in your life. And then by spending time with them, you become very close to them. But also that friendship, according to Epic of Gilgamesh, is going to have certain end, or it is going to achieve certain project. Okay? So that's something that you can already pick up from this transformation of dream of Gilgamesh about Enkidu as a rock to axe. After listening to this story, and it's quite clear that Hisham Hat at this point is somebody serving the Ishtar. Hisham Hat is serving someone like Ninsun, the goddesses. Listening to this story, and she's telling the story to Enkidu about Gilgamesh's dream. king's dream. And then Ninsun actually give symbolism a meaning. This is line 289. My son, the axe you saw is a friend like a wife. You will love him, caress, embrace him, and I, Ninsun, I shall make him your equal. A mighty comrade will come to you and be his friend's savior. Mightiest in the land, strength he possesses. His strength is as mighty as a rock from the sky. So clearly, Ninsun identified rock and axe as actually friend of Gilgamesh. So Enkidu is described as this friend or rival, even savior of Gilgamesh. And after that story, what did they do? After Shema had told Enkidu the dreams of Gilgamesh, this is line 299, the two of them together began making love. Notice language changed from coupling to love. There's the transformation of Enkidu throughout this tablet 1. So there's a transformation of Enkidu, already insinuated with the symbolism of rock to axe, but also there's a kind of evolution of Enkidu from sheer force of nature to tamed or harnessed energy that becomes friends of Gilgamesh. So the tablet 2 is about this taming of Enkidu. And one thing I would like you to really pay close attention to is this phrase, you too like a man will find a place for yourself. So Hisham Hat gives this wise word to Enkidu and said, to become a human, Enkidu, is to find a place for yourself. What kind of place is it? What does it mean for someone like Enkidu, born out of nature? Remember, he was described as someone, he knows not a people, nor even a country. So this is line 108. Somebody doesn't know people, doesn't have a country, but in order for you to become a man, you have to find a place for yourself. What kind of place is this? I think this is a quite philosophical statement. In order for you to become a part of human civilization, to become a human person, you have to find a place for yourself. What kind of place is this, according to Hisham Hat and according to the rest of the Epic of Gilgamesh? This is something that you should think about when you move on from the tablet 1 to tablet 2. So this is a reality. We heard Hisham Hat gave the description of dream to Enkidu, and then tablet 2 is about reality. So moves to the reality of Enkidu going to the city of Uruk. Well, the two of them together were making love. This is page 12, P46, beginning of the tablet 2. He forgot the while where he was born. For 7 days and 7 nights, Enkidu was erect and coupled with Hisham Hat. He's unstoppable, isn't he? He's just going on and on. The harlot opened her mouth, saying to Enkidu, as I look at you, Enkidu, you are like a god. Why with the beast do you wander the wild? Come, I will lead you to Uruk, the town square, to the sacred temple, the home of Anu. Enkidu, arise, let me take you to the temple Eana, the home of Anu. Where men are engaged in labors of skill, you too, like a man, will find a place for yourself. So, Hisham Hat taking Enkidu to the city of Uruk. What did they do first? Bread and beer. First thing the Hisham Hat does is to take the Enkidu to the shepherds. By the hand she took him, like a god she led him. This is line 36, page 13. To the shepherd's camp in the side of the sheep pen, the band of shepherds was gathered around him, talking about him among themselves. This fellow, how like in build he is to Gilgamesh, tall in stature, proud as a battleman. For sure it's Enkidu born in uplands, his strength is as mighty as a rock from the sky. Bread they set before him, ale they set before him. Enkidu ate not the bread, but looked askance. How to eat bread Enkidu knew not, how to drink ale he had never been shown. The harlot opened her mouth, saying to Enkidu, eat the bread Enkidu, essential to life, drink the ale, the lot of the land. Enkidu ate the bread until he was sated, he drank the ale, full 7 goblets, his mood became free, he started to sing, his heart grew merry, his face lit up. So important for you to become a part of a civilization is to eat bread and drink beer. Why do you think that is? A Friday evening, I'm pretty sure some of you are legal age to drink. You go out in the weekend and you party with your friends, right? You drink, you talk about philosophy, you talk about life, you talk about dreams, you go out and you drink. Why do you think that, partying is a part of civilization? Why do you think that is an important thing that differentiates you from animals and differentiates you from nature? This is true in the English language. We talk about companion. The term companion comes from the expression of breaking bread. So breaking the bread with someone, actually this is equivalent to Japanese, and I'm pretty sure it's in Eastern Asian context, to eat the rice from the same bowl. That is the conception of eating the bread here. So it is eating, but it's more than eating. Human eating is something more than just grazing the grasses of the gazelle, okay? Or drinking the water from the pond. There's something in the activity of eating bread or drinking beer that binds us as a human being and differentiates us from nature. That's the ancient Mesopotamian wisdom. So next time when you go out in the weekend, think about this. And you can talk about Epic of Gilgamesh and think about writing more journal entries, right? So you're having a great party and then you do the homework at the same time. Okay. Also notice he says the beer is a lot of land. So the beer symbolizes cultivation of the land and fermentation of the barley, right? It symbolizes something more than just drinking water. So you have to see these symbolisms behind these descriptions. And then goes on to talk about this. He gets haircut, right? That's something that we have not been able to do that in lockdown city of Belgium. He gets the haircut, put the garments, and then he becomes a shepherd. When at night, this is tablet 2, line 60. When at night the shepherds lay sleeping, he struck down wolves, he chased off lions, sleeping lay the senior shepherds, their shepherd boy Enkidu, a man wide awake. A man wide awake. Description of Enkidu at this point is that he becomes the guardian of the Uruk, or he becomes the shepherd boy of the shepherd camp. So the image is something like this. This is the watchdog that I look afar. You know, sometimes German shepherd has this look, and I think many watchdog has this look of suddenly they are alert. Of course, they are part of nature because they're animal, but they are also really dependent on human civilization, and they became a part of a human civilization, and they watch. And notice like different pictures of dog does the same thing. They're really watchful. And they have this look or looking afar, making sure that is that enemy or friend of my friend. So they're looking out for you. So that's the image of Enkidu at this point as a guardian of Uruk. And then he comes across with a certain man invited to the party, wedding, and then he talks to the guy. And the guy describes this is what's going on. The Gilgamesh is a tyrant who takes the woman away from the bridegroom. This is P166. This is page 15 in the middle. At the fellow's words, his face paled in anger. Right? So the guardian of the Uruk, the Enkidu, becomes angry at Gilgamesh. Why are you doing this to my people and your people? In the bottom of page 15, P185, you see townsfolk describing the image of Enkidu as really alike Gilgamesh. So again, the friendship symbolizes certain alikeness, right? The similarity here. Interestingly, Enkidu is a little shorter and stronger built than a Gilgamesh, who is a taller and possibly more elegant, right? But at this point, they look really alike. And then page 16, tablet 2, 103, line 103. The land of Uruk was standing around him. The land was gathered about him. A crowd was milling about before him. The menfolk were thronging around him. Like a babe in arms, they were kissing his feet. Already the fellow, for the goddess of weddings, was ready to bed. For Gilgamesh, like a god, was set up a substitute. So here, the image of Enkidu surrounded by people, what we have seen in the dream described by the Hisham Hat becomes real. Enkidu is seen in the center of people of Uruk and facing Gilgamesh. Then you see this enormous fight that you can easily imagine a movie would make out of, right? Like there's going to be a 10 minutes of fight scene between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, right? And after the contest, they become friends. So there's a friendship with Gilgamesh cultivated out of this fight. Friendship, according to ancient Mesopotamia, is not about liking the same thing, watching the same movies, and have the same taste for food, same taste for everything, having fun time together, you never fight. No, ancient friendship contains the possibility of rivalry and fight. Okay, so friend, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, is somebody who can challenge you. When you make a mistake, when you become a tyrant, when you become arrogant, your friend should be someone who can tell you that, hey, you're doing wrong, I don't agree with you, I'm going to put end to this. Right? So the friend is someone that actually challenges you according to the Epic of Gilgamesh. So do you agree or disagree? That's something that you should think about. Think about the idea of friendship that comes to your mind and contrast that with the notion of friendship seen in the Epic of Gilgamesh and see which one is more sound. Or do you agree or disagree? you should think about these things. And then Gilgamesh and Enkidu become friends, and Gilgamesh takes Enkidu to his mother, wild cow Ninsun. There are broken lines that we can't really know what she exactly said. And then Ninsun actually described Enkidu has no kith or kin. This is line 175. The bottom of page 17, line 175. Bitterly he, Enkidu, possessed no kith or kin. Shaggy hair hanging loose, he was born in the wild, has no brother. Standing there, Enkidu heard what she said, and thinking it over, he sat down weeping. His eyes brimmed with tears. His arms fell limp. His strength ebbed away. They took hold of each other. They linked their hands like Gilgamesh. To Enkidu he spoke a word, saying, "Why, my friend, did your eyes brim with tears, your arms fall limp, your strength ebb away?" Said Enkidu to him, Gilgamesh, "My friend, my heart is aggrieved. Through sobbing my legs do tremble. Tear has entered my heart." Tear has entered my heart, line 191. This adds one more conception to the notion of friendship according to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Friendship is about companionship, protection, rivalry, someone who can challenge you. Friendship is about capacity to match your strength and stop you from committing tyranny. But also, the tear can enter your heart. What do you think that means? Having a friend, and because of that, you can be terrified for the first time once you have a friend. What do you think that is? I honestly think from this scene, right, that Enkidu was oblivious to the fact that he was alone. He was part of nature, he was with animals, but with animals, he didn't know he was alone. He was just part of the natural force. By becoming one with Hisham Hat, he was capable of differentiating himself from the rest of the nature by cultivating reason and understanding. And then he became a guardian of Uruk by serving or finding a place in the society, by serving for the good of the society. He became civilized man and then cultivated friendship with the Gilgamesh. And for the first time, by listening to the words of Ninsun, he realized he was alone for the longest time. So having a friend is not this rainbow and everything is happy-go-lucky, happy feelings that your world is perfect because you have a great friend. No, once you have a friend, there's an element of a tear that will enter your heart, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh. So you really have to think about what kind of tear is this? The tear that accompanies any kind of good friendship. What enters the heart of Enkidu that makes him terrified? This is something that you should really ask yourself. What makes you afraid from having a friend? What kind of tear the Epic of Gilgamesh is describing? And how can we make sense of this tear in relation to this text? I leave at that. And then friendship is about project. It's something about the great conquer. It is about conquering the great ordeal. So Gilgamesh suggests at the end of page 18, this is the yellow tablet 110. Gilgamesh opened his mouth, saying to Enkidu, "Ferocious Humbaba, let us slay him, so his power is no more. In the forest of Cedar, where Humbaba dwells, let us frighten him in his lair." Enkidu opened his mouth, saying to Gilgamesh, "I knew him, my friend, in the uplands when I roamed. In the forest of Cedar, where Humbaba dwells, let us frighten him in his lair." So friendship is also about achieving this great project. Many people think it's impossible, and you conquer that project is to solidify your friendship as a part of the cure of the tyranny. Remember, this is the process of curing the problem in the heart of hero, protagonist, Gilgamesh. And then the friendship of Enkidu enters here as a solution to the problem of the tyranny. So let's take a look at the notion of friendship that we can actually extract from this interaction between Gilgamesh and Enkidu in the following. The nature of friendship that we can extract from reading the Epic of Gilgamesh are something like this. First of all, they are God sent, like a meteor. True friendship is not something that you can artificially construct. You can't pay someone to become your friend, or you can plan someone to become your friend. They are describing that it is something that suddenly supernaturally happens in our life. Friends are someone that you come across accidentally in the course of your life, and unexpectedly sometimes you meet someone and they become friends of your lifetime. So friends are God sent like a meteor, as mighty as a rock from the sky, right? They're also about equality. There's a likeness between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, but also the equality of their power and rivalry. We talked about this. And also we talked about the friends become a source of terror. Terror has entered my heart, my friend. Cultivating friendship would have to risk certain tears. And then we have seen at the bottom of page 18, the Gilgamesh suggests that we should hunt Humbaba. We have to visit him in the forest of cedar and take him down. Look at how Enkidu responds to this Gilgamesh. First, sort of Gilgamesh is much more powerful than Enkidu. First of all, Gilgamesh won the fight. They became friends. Also, Gilgamesh said we should hunt this Humbaba and take him down. And Enkidu says this in the bottom of page 18. Humbaba, his voice is the deluge, his speech is fire, his breath is death. Why do you desire to do this thing? An unwinnable battle is Humbaba's ambush. So Humbaba represents death, the deluge. His voice is the deluge, his speech is fire, and his breath is death. Right? So the Humbaba symbolizes this distraction, an evil force, or death that we cannot conquer. Gilgamesh opened his mouth saying to Enkidu, this is top of page 19, I will climb, my friend, the forest slopes. We have some missing lines. Enkidu opened his mouth to speak, saying to Gilgamesh, my friend, how can we go to the home of Humbaba? So to keep safe the cedars, Enlil made it his lot to terrify men. Remember, Enlil is the lord of wind, but also he is the god of underworld. So this god of underworld put Humbaba, the destruction, as the guard of the forest of cedar. So there's a lot of symbolism here. And continuously Enkidu is saying, that is a journey which must not be made. This is tablet 2, line 218. That is a man who must not be looked on. He who guards the forest of cedar, his reach is wide. Humbaba, his voice is the deluge. His speech is fire. His breath is death. He hears the forest murmur at 6 leagues distance. Who is there would venture into this forest? Adat ranks first and Humbaba second. Who is there would oppose him among the Igigi? So to keep safe the cedars, Enlil made it his lot to terrify men. If you penetrate his forest, you are seized by tremors. Gilgamesh opened his mouth to speak, saying to Enkidu, why, my friend, do you speak like a weakling? With your spineless words you make me despondent. As for men, his days are numbered. Whatever he may do, it is but wind, exists not for me. You are born and grew up in the wild. Even lions were afraid of you. You experienced all. Grown men fled away from your presence. Your heart is tried and tested in combat. Come, my friend, let us hie to the forge. So Enkidu is basically saying that I don't think that's a great idea. In fact, I think that's a horrible idea to go after this monster called Humbaba. He's the pure symbolism of destruction. I don't think we should do this. And Gilgamesh said, don't be a usi, right? Don't be such a weakling that you make me even angry to hear that you're saying such a thing. We should just do this. And then they prepare weapons like axe. Again, axe becomes the symbolism of a tool to cut down Humbaba. And then daggers and blades. And then end of page 20, this is the Yale tablet 185. Gilgamesh says that we are doing this for the eternal fame. So friendship can be described not only with this miraculous contingency or godsend nature or equality, rivalry, or source of terror, but it also has to aim at certain eternal fame. It has to mark a signature that this friendship achieves something great that the following generations will talk about. It is the nature of this, perpetual motion towards something great. That's the friendship according to Epic of Gilgamesh. Now Gilgamesh goes on to get a permission from people, right? So he talks to, hear me, O young men of Uruk the sheepfold. This is 260. O young men of Uruk who understand combat. Bold as I am, I shall tread the distant path to the home of Humbaba. I shall face a battle I know not. I shall ride a road I know not. Give me your blessing as I go on my journey, so I may see again your faces in safety, and return glad a heart through Uruk's gate. And he promises these great things once I do this. Then what people say? People talk to Enkidu and tell Enkidu, tell him not to go to the forest of cedar. This is 274. That is a journey which must not be made. That is a man who must not be looked on. He who guards the forest of cedar, his reach is wide. This Humbaba, his voice is deluge, his speech is fire, his breath is death. So people of Uruk actually size Enkidu and tell Enkidu, could you please stop this crazy king to go on to do this crazy journey? Could you please put some sense into him? So Enkidu and people has this rapport or kind of agreement at this point of the story. Not only the young folks that know the combat talk to Enkidu about this, but also senior advisors tell the same thing to Enkidu. Could you please not do this? So that at the end of tablet 2, Gilgamesh actually become hesitant. A kind of terror enters his heart. Now maybe if everybody from the city is saying this, and my rival, right, my friend Enkidu is saying this, maybe I shouldn't do this. Now, this is precisely the kind of the behavior that we couldn't see in Tablet 1. He was just unstoppable tyrant, right? He was doing whatever he wanted, and nobody could match his might, right? But then now, once we have Enkidu, people can talk to Enkidu and then work their way to stop the Gilgamesh from doing something stupid. So at the end of Tablet 2, you see a little bit hesitation in the side of the king. And then that takes us to the Tablet 3. Preparations for the expedition to the forest of Cedar. This is where the character Ninsun comes in. Again, the beginning of the tablet 3 starts with the people of Uruk talking to Gilgamesh. To Uruk's key come back in safety. This is 3 line 1. Do not rely, O Gilgamesh, on your strength alone. Look long and hard, land a blow you can count on. Who goes in front saves his companion. Who knows the road protects his friend. Let Enkidu go before you. He knows the journey to the forest of Cedar. So make sure that you work with Enkidu. You rely on Enkidu and you'll be fine. And then they tell Enkidu to take care of the king. And then both Gilgamesh and Enkidu goes to Ninsun to get blessing before the journey. This is line 19. Taking each other hand in hand, Gilgamesh and Enkidu went to Palace Sublime into the presence of the great queen Ninsun. Gilgamesh rose and entered before her. Said Gilgamesh to Ninsun, I shall tread, O Ninsun, bold as I am, the distance path to the home of Hambaba. I shall face a battle I know not. I shall ride a road I know not. I beseech you, give me your blessing for my journey. Let me see your face again in safety and return glad at heart through Uruk's gate. Then Ninsun finally goes into this sort of a prayer. She prays to Shamash, the sun god. Now this is one of the most important gods in this entire story. This is line 45. Why did you afflict my son Gilgamesh with so restless a spirit? So she goes up to this sort of rooftop and then prays to the sun god. Why did you afflict my son Gilgamesh with so restless a spirit? For now you have touched him, and he will tread the distant path to the home of Hambaba. And then he prays to make sure that you give him a protection. And this is line 85. In next page, page 25. May Aya the bright unfearing remind you, the day Gilgamesh and Enkidu encounter Hambaba, O Shamash, rise against Hambaba the mighty gale winds, south wind, north wind, east wind, west wind, blast, counterblast, typhoon, hurricane, tempest, devil wind, frost wind, gale, and tornado. Let rise 13 winds and Hambaba's face darken. Let the weapons of Gilgamesh then reach Hambaba. After your very own fires are kindled, at that time, O Shamash, turn your face to the supplicant. Ninsun is actually praying, but also this is the kind of the vision, again, the prophecy of what is going to happen in the rest of the story. So you can see this is a wise character that see forward. They're capable of providing us a vision. After she gives a prayer to Shamash, she comes down and then talks to Enkidu. This is line 121, tablet 321. Almighty Enkidu, you are not sprung from my womb, but henceforth your brood will belong with the votaries of Gilgamesh, the priestesses, the hero duels, and the woman of the temple. At this point, you can see Hisham Hat is probably in the background, right? She put the symbols on Enkidu's neck, the priestesses took in the fondling, and the divine daughters brought up the foster child. Almighty Enkidu, you are not sprung from my womb, but henceforth your brood will belong with the votaries of Gilgamesh, the priestesses, the hero duels, and the woman of the temple. She put the symbols on Enkidu's neck, the priestesses took in the fondling, and the divine daughters brought up the foster child. Enkidu, whom I love, I take for my son. Enkidu in brotherhood, Gilgamesh shall favor him. So at this point, not only that she prays for the 13 winds against Hambaba, adopts Enkidu. And there's a kind of brotherhood between Enkidu and Gilgamesh. So their equality becomes even closer at this point. Gilgamesh starting from the side of divine and even tyrannical divine creature to becoming more equal to Enkidu, and Enkidu started from this beastly animality to become part of human. So there's a beautiful equality between Gilgamesh and Enkidu at this point, in front of the goddess that who can see the future and praying to the sun god. Okay. Then from line 210 onwards, Gilgamesh gives instruction to the people of Uruk. what to do, what not to do when we are away from this city. Then people say the same thing. Do not rely, O Gilgamesh, on your strength alone. Look along and hard land below you can count on. Who goes in front will save his comrade. Who knows the road shall guard his friend. Let Enkidu go before you. Now, there is still an unequal relationship between Gilgamesh and the city of Uruk in a sense that just Gilgamesh is telling Uruk, this is what I'm going to do, right? And then city of Uruk is telling Enkidu, this is line 226, to Enkidu, in our assembly, we place the king in your care. You bring him back and replace him in ours. So Enkidu, please take good care of the king. Enkidu opened his mouth to speak, saying to Gilgamesh, my friend, turn back, do not pursue his journey. So it's a little bit, Enkidu is hesitant to go on this journey at this point, but then Uruk is, instructed that the king is actually leaving. So the city of Uruk told Enkidu, could you please do this? And then eventually Enkidu takes the side of Gilgamesh. This is Yo tablet 272. Enkidu opened his mouth, saying to Gilgamesh, where you've set your mind, begin the journey. Let your heart have no fear. Keep your eyes on me. In the forest I knew his lair, and the ways too, the humble wonders. Speak to the crowd and send them home. Again, Enkidu shifts closer to the side of Gilgamesh and said, do not worry, I can take good care of you, and we can make this journey happen. And we move forward. Okay, so that's the end of tablet 3. And then they are heading to the forest of Cedar, where this terrifying Hambaba resides. Now you have to think about the meaning of this journey. What do you think Gilgamesh and Enkidu are achieving by conquering Hambaba in their journey to the forest of Cedar? What do you think the significance of this journey? What kind of meaning the Epic of Gilgamesh is trying to tell us? So what each character is thinking, but also what the storyteller is trying to tell us from this picture of two heroes going to the forest of Cedar and conquering this monster called Hambaba, which symbolizes destruction. Okay, on that note, concluding questions. First question, why do you think friendship is a cure of tyranny? So we have seen in the beginning of this lecture the ancient Mesopotamian conception of tyranny. I don't think it's quite different from what we imagine as tyranny in contemporary society either. But, there's a strong element of the tyrant messing with the people's life, especially the order of family. If the ruler is destroying family lives, that's a sign of tyranny, according to ancient Mesopotamian thinking. And then they also provided this notion of friendship as a cure to tyranny. Instead of removing the corrupted ruler and corruption, they said, no, we need to add friendship to the ruler so that we can actually cure the problem. Why do you think friendship is a solution to the problem? Do you think this is a really good solution, or do you think there's a truth to this insight? Where did Hisham Hat go? As you notice, after tablet 2, she suddenly disappears. She was such a prominent character in the beginning of the story, but somehow she disappears. First of all, where did she go? And why do you think she's no longer in the story? What is the meaning of her appearance and disappearance in the beginning of the story? That's the question. You may want to think about the symbolism of love that we talked about in the beginning of this story, how Enkidu's energy is harnessed through her to become a part of civilization. So you have to think about that. Third question, what distinguishes humans from nature or animals? So we have seen Hisham Hat having sex with Enkidu, and that brings Enkidu away from realm of nature and animals. But also you see Gilgamesh, a tyrant, this really beastly tyrant that nobody can stop him. He's a rampage, bull on rampage, right? He's incapable of listening to anybody else and just doing whatever he wants. What stops him from doing that to become more humane, right? So there's a notion of distinction between humans from nature or humans from this bestiality. What makes us become human according to this beginning of the Epic of Gilgamesh or throughout the Epic of Gilgamesh? That is something you should keep thinking. The role of Hambaba. What do you think is the symbolic, allegorical significance of Hambaba in this story? Now, we have seen that he's described as his voice is the deluge, right? So he's compared to the deluge that broke the historical narrative in this story. But also he resides in the forest of Cedar as the guardian of the forest. What does the forest symbolize? Does the fact that he's placed by the underworld god Enlil, does that give some meaning to the significance of Hambaba in this story? So these are something that you should think about as you reread the first 3 tablets, but also you should keep these questions in mind as you read later part of the story. Okay, on that note, I'd like to finish this lecture. Thanks for listening to the end. Once again, I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about this lecture and also what you think about the text. And I'm very much looking forward to reading your entries and your questions in the future. Have a nice weekend and see you next week.